All right, so let's jump into two benefits and two challenges of the use of foster care and adoption and child welfare. Starting with the benefits, child welfare workers have connections. Um, they have community partners, mental or behavioral health agencies. They can refer services for um, wraparound services, substance use or misuse, treatment programs. They can do a lot of things that these workers in child welfare are trained on, and they're also trained on the trauma within child welfare that this system ultimately impacts. Not that there's not impacted trauma before child welfare is involved, but child welfare has support systems that can alleviate trauma that has been impacted and the trauma that being removed or in foster care or adoptive situations can place on children. Open-ended adoptions. There's a lot of policy and procedure surrounding a bunch of stuff that goes on through here. Um, Departments of child welfare in Oklahoma include child protective services that initiate the removal, but these services also incorporate multidisciplinary teams such as CASA or in Muskogee Kids Space, which is basically like a CASA advocacy group for children's. The child protective service individuals are also trained on the trauma that comes from being removed, and the intent is to reunite a family. Um, whether this is through kinship placements, family friends, neighbors within a community, anybody that is familiar with the kids, so the kids don't have to switch schools, make new friends, deal with the trauma without any form of normality, any normal activities without having to adjust to being normal. Um, the NTI, right, National Adoption and Mental Health Competency Training Initiative, estimates that families of adoptive or foster kiddos seek mental health resources 3 times more than the amount of families formed by birth. So your dynamic family that is suffering within a system that cannot find help or complete the services has not sought this help or doesn't know how. That's another benefit of child welfare. They show you how to seek help without losing your parental rights. It takes a lot to terminate the parental rights, and these multidisciplinary teams created within child welfare through the advocacy groups, CASA, OKDHS, Kids Space in Muskogee, like mentioned, and any system within the community fostering hope, which is new to Muskogee and is really great, advocates for the safety threshold to not be crossed again, but continue the family dynamic, which is really great. There's a lot of good things that go into child welfare and advocating for foster care and adoption. But when we look at the challenges within this child welfare system, we think about the worker, the workers. Sometimes you can have multiple workers due to burnout, high turnover rates in child welfare, and also just you can be a 1, 2, or 3 in OKDHS, right? Or a 4, or a supervisor, or a lead group. Depending on the case history, any bias that was formed, anything that's been going on, ultimately the challenges within foster care and adoption and child welfare lead to workers and that system with the turnover rate. individuals who have children removed are at the mercy of the worker and their supervisors, right? Any form of bias or unethical decisions that have been made within a community that is strongly tight-knit, or somebody knows somebody or anybody taking place on this case, is weighed by that worker and their supervisor and their team's decisions. And the individuals experiencing the removal and placement of children or child are going to be subject to this. You can have a biological parent in prison that is recently released and wants to advocate for that child, and then a good child welfare worker will assess that parent. Assessments, those are challenges of foster care and adoption, especially for the biological parent and the adoptive or foster care parent. I think it's overlooked, but the trainings that adoptive and foster care parents go through shouldn't be overlooked when considering a biological parent wanting to reunite with a child that they lost, or, So our challenges are workers assessing, evaluating, and contemplating safety thresholds while trying to work for a biological parent that didn't have their rights terminated, taking a kid out of a placement that they might have been in for 12 to 24 months. These are challenges that traumatize individuals, communities, families, and ultimately children. But without the worker involved, even if the worker switches, I do believe that any bias or unethical decisions made while continuing investigations should be addressed. I know challenges of foster care and adoption can include policy and procedure and ethical decisions. So when we look at all these intersecting problems, we have to think about the kid or the children. And that's also a challenge of the worker. There's more than two challenges for each factor involved. It's a never-ending process, and finding placements and foster and adoptive families, even though somebody advocates for a family or to adopt, or I want these kids, well, so do their parents, so that's challenges